But now I want to, of course, introduce finally our friend, Peter Heller. And if you haven't seen him before, well, you're in for a treat. Peter's somebody I've known for a long time. And of course, anybody who's been in this kind of work probably has run into him in one place or another. He is the founder of Heller Fundraising, but he has a long career in this field. After another career as a filmmaker, he entered into a lot of higher education campaign work, University of California, Berkeley, UC San Francisco, Tel Aviv universities, Friends of American Friends office, and of course, Columbia, where he did tremendous work in the engineering school. And since founding Heller Fundraising, which was, I'm trying to remember when that was, 2004, Peter has been guiding dozens upon dozens upon dozens of organizations to figure out what exactly they needed to do to achieve greater things. So with that, I want to turn it over to Peter. Peter, thanks so much for doing this today.
Thank you, Jay. Hello, everybody. First thing I want to say is capital campaigns matter for a lot of reasons, and we're going to get into that in a minute. And I'm pretty sure Jay and I will still be friends after the next hour. So I'm glad to have everybody here, and I'm seeing in the chat, I know a lot of you, so hello, and welcome to those who are new to me. Hope we get to know each other somehow and in some way. I am going to share my screen, so you'll see less of me and more of my slides. Let's take one technical moment here to do that. Okay, and Jay, I'm counting on you to shout out if there's any technical issues with anything, and otherwise I'm just going to go ahead.
Everything looks great, Peter. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So you've come to the right place. Today we're going to talk about your capital campaign. Can you launch now? This is a really important topic for nonprofits, as I mentioned before. The reason is that a capital campaign is not just about the money that you can raise, but it's an opportunity to make your organization stronger. And in fact, getting even bigger than that, the reason you want to make your organization stronger is because you want to be able to have more impact in your community, however you define your community. I'm going to start by just giving a very quick overview of the Heller Fundraising Group, so you know what I'm about and who you're talking to, and then we're going to dive into the material. It's been organized in a way that we believe works really well. We're going to have some breakpoints throughout where it's a great opportunity for you to ask questions throughout the presentation, so they don't have to all get held up at the till the end. Also, if you want to use those question and answer periods to check your email and do that sort of stuff so you can pay more attention during the actual presentation, you might get more out of it, but that's entirely up to you. And at those breakpoints, Jay will read out a few questions to me each time. So first, about the Heller Fundraising Group. We are a for-profit company serving the nonprofit world, but we've come up with a mission statement, and this is it. We build abundance for our nonprofit clients through customized consulting and training for successful capital campaigns, insightful feasibility studies, and prosperous major gift programs. And today we're going to talk, of course, about capital campaigns. Here's a quick smattering of our clients. We've worked mostly on the East Coast. The company is based in New York City, so a lot of New York area clients, but we have worked around country. We've currently got 2 clients in Texas, one that's based in California, working nationally, all over the place. This is our team. Just to explain a little bit, we have 5 people who are employees. That's me on the left with short hair, and then the 4 women to the right of me, and then everybody else there is a collaborating consultant, and we have about 10 more collaborating consultants in addition to the folks whose smiling faces you see there. We use the collaborating consultants as our project leaders with each of our clients. What do we do? It's a great question. So we do a lot of capital campaign work, which is how we're qualified to talk to you today about capital campaigns. And we do the feasibility and planning studies that lead up to those campaigns. And today we're going to talk about the campaigns first. And at the end, I'll describe what a planning study or a feasibility study is about so that you have some sort of technical knowledge so that you can understand why we would do that in the first place. We also help development offices with a ramp up from, maybe just a new office or getting one or two development folks to a larger office. And we build major gift programs for nonprofits when they're not in capital campaigns. And just like today, we do a lot of training and coaching. I put this slide here now because if you want to get in touch with me personally with your questions, feel free to email me at my personal email address, peter@hellerfundraisinggroup.com. And depending on the depth of the question, either me or somebody on our team will get back to you. You can also check out our website, hellerfundraisinggroup.com. We have a handful of free tools that you can download. I wanted to just let you know about those two now before things get along too far, and that's the URL for that, /tools. So let's dive into capital campaigns. I'm going to say a few introductory things about campaigns, and then we're going to break it down by the Heller Fundraising Group's 6 elements for capital campaign success. So the first thing is super obvious, but I want to make sure that it is in fact obvious to everybody. A capital campaign requires you to take a big pile of money, like it's there on the left, and get it into your nonprofit's bank account there on the right. That's, in essence, that's the bottom line. That's what you're doing in a capital campaign. You're not doing anything else. But if you just focus on the money, you're going to get some, you're not going to get as big of a pile. And the secret about capital campaigns is if you do it well, when you're finished, your organization, your volunteers, your staff, your donors, and the community you serve are not only in a stronger place because of the thing you've raised the money for, but you're all woven together much stronger and all really pushing for a stronger future for your community. So it's 100% about the money, and there's a big asterisk there that it's about your community too, if it's done well, and a stronger nonprofit. So think for a minute, I don't know if you've ever thought about the word campaign. It's not used all that frequently in the English language. You've got fundraising campaigns and capital campaigns. You've got marketing campaigns. You have political campaigns. There's also military campaigns. I don't think there's too many other kinds of campaigns. Every one of those activities has one thing in common. You don't just waltz out into the political arena and start getting votes on election day. No, you spend months, if not years, planning for your election campaign. There's all kinds of strategy. There's rejiggering all along the way. Same exact thing for a nonprofit fundraising campaign. You need very careful planning and strategy. Then you need to execute. And then you need to adjust all the way along as you're going. So here at the Heller Fundraising Group, we've come up with a definition of capital campaigns. And I'm going to read the slides. I know everybody here can do their own reading, but I'm going to read them for you out loud here. A capital campaign is a focused effort to raise money above and beyond regular operating expenses. It usually happens over a period of years, and when done effectively, it can galvanize attention on the future of the community. There's another asterisk. I didn't say the future of your organization. I care deeply about your organizations, but your organization really exists only so that your community can be stronger. Same is true for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It exists to show art, to make the world a better place. It's never about the new building. even though often it's focused on creating the new building or the renovated building. But the more you can focus on the future of your organization, the more powerful your campaign will be. And we'll get to that a little bit more in a few minutes, because it's really, really, like, if you take nothing else away from this time together, it's focusing on the future of your community. Here's some bad reasons for a campaign. I'm just going to let you read those, but you know, many people come to us and they're like, Peter, we've got our 25th anniversary coming up. Our board said we should do a campaign. Our response to that is always, what's the irrefutable, compelling reason that you need money? If it's just, we got a birthday coming up and we want to celebrate, that's not going to cut it to get galvanized attention from your donors and community around this effort. There has to be something more than that. Wanting to own a building is nice, but it's got to be a compelling reason. Why can't you just lease it? Could be cheaper. Board members suggest lots of great things. Board members also suggest lots of really dumb things. Just being honest here. Just because a board member suggests it doesn't make it real. There has to be a compelling reason. Also, if you have nothing to do on the weekend, find something to do. Don't launch a capital campaign. I want to say something in terms of the pandemic and COVID. You need to believe 100% in the mission of your organization, not only to get up out of bed in the morning and do whatever the hard work it is you do at your organization, whether you're, an executive director, a development person, a board member, any role. You need to believe 100% in it. And to run a capital campaign, same thing is true. And this has become really clear as we emerge from COVID, that organizations during COVID had to figure out how to make sure they mattered in a really genuine, heartfelt way, not just in a like, hey, give to us. And we're in a world now where what you do matters a lot, but you got to believe in it. Otherwise, you should probably be doing something else, or your organization should recalibrate what they're doing. Also want to say just really quickly, this is the topic of fundraising, campaigns, and the economy. This is something we could talk about for a long time, but don't ever let a down economy stop you from fundraising. That does not mean that people will give as quickly if there's an economic downturn, or that your nonprofit will not have challenges. But those who literally stick their heads in the sand like the proverbial ostrich, and we see it happen all the time, are simply not going to be the organizations that are going to do well. Okay, so Jay, I'm going to go into the 6 elements now. And at the end of the dollar goal, which is our first element for a successful campaign, I'm going to pause and see if anybody has any questions. And you can feel free now to already put your questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
So we found that by dividing the conceptual framework of a capital campaign, which is a complex activity, into these 6 elements, it helps nonprofits execute on the work. It helps us as a consulting company engage with them to discuss the various elements so that we're not doing everything all at once. And for the reason you came here today, remember the name of the webinar is Can I Launch Now? This is going to help you figure out how close you are to being able to launch a campaign or not. Okay, so the dollar goal is our first element. A campaign dollar goal can include any of these things. Many, but not all campaigns are started because of a need of a nonprofit to either renovate or purchase a new building or property. Alongside of that, nonprofits either have an increase in programming that they need funding for. Sometimes there is an endowment. these three things can be all together, or they can be mutually exclusive. We want to make sure that you include the cost of running your campaign, whether it's for printed materials, website, hiring a consulting firm, creating a really nice donor wall, whatever it is, include those at the beginning so you don't get surprised at the end that there's extra costs. These are the basic concepts. I'm going to give you now, I think it's 3 examples of campaign budgets. When you think budget for a capital campaign, think super, super, super simple. Okay, we don't want to do complex budgeting. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Here's a $6.5 million campaign for a children's advocacy organization in Westchester, New York. 3 line items, super simple. Current initiatives for children, reaching new goals, meaning new programs, and the endowment, $6.5 million. Bam, that's it. They raised that and more. Easy to explain. Here's a synagogue in Falls Church, Virginia, near where Jay lives. And Jay, I think we met one time when I was had coffee when I was working with this organization one time. This is the line items for synagogue renovation. There are literally 5 line items. These are the things they needed to do. And we worked with their architectural firm to kind of give the approximate price of each of the things so that there could be a line item for each. And then we fed the cost of doing the campaign into that and came up with a nice, neat $16 million. Does it always have to be a round number? No, but this was a nice way to do it. And they raised the money, easy to explain, hard to raise, but they did an amazing job. This one, do not squint. It's here for a reason, to show this is too much information for a campaign budget. This is a arts organization in New York City, was $60 million campaign. This is what the program, the project managers, the real estate project managers came up with them for the overall costs. There were actually many pages behind this of spreadsheets. This is important for managing the project. Bad idea for a capital campaign. So what we did was we shrunk it down to this, and then we shrunk it down to this. And in fact, if you just look at the first 2 lines, new building, $50 million, enhanced programming, $10 million, boom, $60 million. The rest is just the details. That's taking a very complex thing, shrinking it down to a very, very simple story. The last thing I want to say about the dollar goal is, once you know how much you need to raise, you then need to distribute that out into a gift table, which tells you approximately the number of gifts at various levels that you are going to aim for from your donor base. And we'll go into, when we look at prospects in a few minutes, we'll go into this in a little more detail. For now, the essential thing is, every gift table that the Heller Fundraising Group does with its clients, whether it's like this, it's a $5 million campaign. We've done these for $500,000 campaigns. We've done them for $500 million campaigns. Every one has a similar breakdown in terms of leadership gifts, major gifts, and community gifts. Obviously, for a $500 million campaign, the dollar amounts are going to be bigger. For a $500,000 campaign, they're going to be smaller, but there's a distribution like this. And you'll see that the success of this particular campaign depends on 8 gifts at the top level that's going to make up 70% of the campaign. That's a really powerful number and a powerful thing to talk about, where no matter the size of the campaign, in an ideal world, you want to get the majority of your money from a small handful of people. So I promised I was going to stop there. I see there's a few questions. Jay, do you want to hit me with some questions?
Sure. Yeah, we have actually several from one really engaged participant here. So thank you for those. The first one I'll take the liberty of answering, Peter, and that's about whether or not there will be slides for this. And there will be. You'll see in a link towards the end of the presentation in the chat. Our producer, Jack, will put a link there for you. You'll get an email after the session with a link to those slides. So you can be on the lookout for those. And another question was, referencing first what they were able to do. The participant says, I was able to raise $187,000 in grants last year, but felt I could have raised much more. Many of the funders thought the programs were great, but that someone else would naturally support it. Any tips for communicating the need?
That sounds a little bit off topic for the capital campaign. It's a bit of a deeper question. But I do hope that this case for support section is going to help you with that.
Yeah, I thought you might go there, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and share it.
But feel free to be in touch with me if you want some other ideas on that.
And then there's also kind of a general question that was asked by the same participant, which comes up frequently in our sessions. And it's not necessarily specific to campaigns, but it is something that you may address as you go through the rest of this, Peter. And that's, why is it so hard for Black organizations or other organizations that are addressing different parts of the community to raise money when in public there seems to be so much support? So I don't know if that's something you're going to touch on later, but I know that is a frequent question.
Yeah, that's, I wasn't going to address that head on. I don't know if I'm the expert on that. First of all, it's really disappointing to hear that every time it comes up. Mm-hmm. Part of the question is, how much of the wealthy donor community and the foundation community are being pro organizations of color as a performative thing versus like they really care. And I also, like, it's hard for everybody to raise money. I don't know, I don't know the specifics, so I can't say how much harder it is and what the scenario is. I wish I had a magic wand where, like, we're all fighting to make the world a better place. And unfortunately, that's part of the fight today. So
all the questions we have at the moment, Peter.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going because we've got 5 more exciting elements and a little bit of information on feasibility studies. And I appreciate everybody's attention and questions. So the case for support. Now, it's not good to have like favorite children, but this is probably my favorite one of the 6 elements. And here we go. Oops, here we don't go. Let's see. Okay, so here are the things that you want to include in a case. Your vision for the future, the problem, I'm going to get back to that, your nonprofit's solutions, your nonprofit's accomplishments, history, and data points, and the campaign budget, and a call to action. Some people think that like a case document is where you ask for the gift. I'm personally not a big fan of that. I think it's really where you're making an exciting, literally a case for support. I think that the problem is really central because it's sort of, I like to think of it almost as a movie script or a movie where if you had a movie, whether it's an action adventure film or a romantic comedy, whatever, if the hero of that movie immediately gets the things they want, you've got a 3-minute movie. They fall in love, they solve the problem, they save the world. That doesn't happen. There's always, every scene, the way to write a good movie is every single scene has roadblocks for your main characters, and they have to overcome those roadblocks. We want a case to demonstrate what the big roadblock is to that vision for the future. And it can take some effort for your organization to really crystallize that, which is often why it's good to have an external writer pushing you on that, an external team like us, we really push deeply on, like, figure out the problem. What's the problem? Because, you can be so entrenched in your day-to-day work that it's not often something you think about. In any case, we're going to go through a few different case documents, and I'm going to show you at least how we like to do it at the Heller Fundraising Group. So first thing is, some of you may remember, like, there used to be a book, I don't even know if it's still out there, when new parents are like, going to have a child. There's a book called What Shall We Name the Baby? It has like all kinds of different baby names in it. The name for your campaign matters. It's maybe not the first thing you want to do for the case, but you want to find a compelling, short name, and we're going to look at a few of them here, and figure out, like, you're going to use that in your document. You're going to also use it when you refer to your case and to your campaign. The other thing is, speaking of superhero movies, this is something that many nonprofits get wrong. Sorry to say, but I want to give you our perspective on this. Who is the hero of your case? If you remember our definition of a campaign being a fundraising effort that's going to make your community stronger, it's the community you serve is the hero of the case. It's not your donors. It's not your nonprofit. It's not your building. It's the community, right? The campaign exists only to make your community stronger. So please make your case not a me document, but our community is valuable and needs to be even stronger document. So we're now going to look at, I think it's 3 examples of cases that we did that we're really proud of. This one is, it's the Irish Arts Center. It's in Manhattan, in New York City. That really complex budget I showed you earlier in the dollar goal part, that was for this. So $60 million campaign. This is this was a rendering, because the building wasn't anywhere near built yet, but this is a rendering for what the building would look like. I love the title, Almost Home. It's like, we're not quite there yet. We're almost there. New York City is not quite Ireland, but it's, it's almost there, almost home. The campaign for the new Irish Arts Center. Now, the thing I want to show you, which is going to be in this case and in the few other examples, is that there's a lot of scene setting at the beginning and very little discussion, actually no discussion of money or the campaign. And I'm just going to go through these quickly. But so here's the cover, it's page 1. Then we go to just like a little quote from a famous actor about Ireland. Then we get, there's a sort of a rendering, map of Ireland, a little more quotes, sort of setting the scene. So we're, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in, no mention of the campaign. We're setting the scene. We're building the emotional tension. And then later, I don't have the whole case here, but it goes into the challenge and what the new building will do for the community that the organization serves. The next one is this, was the budget I showed you for the synagogue in Falls Church, Virginia. Here's the cover, A Home for the Future of Judaism. Turn the page, you've got the senior rabbi and her husband there with other people in the background. You have the front of where they keep their Torahs, which would be meaningful for people in the community. That's a picture of that. You've got some great quotes. You turn the page and they talk about the future of Judaism, meaningful, relevant, transformative. Nothing about the campaign. You're 5 pages in. You're setting the scene. Same thing here for a children's center in Ossining, New York, which is in Westchester. This is a $19 million campaign for their future home. A little girl who's looking out over a mock view of this is what the new building will look out over the Hudson River. Our children, our future. Turn the page, more pictures of what you'll see out of the building and the children in the current children's center, their vision. You turn the page again. It talks about, what's great about the community, then boom, it's a risky future. They're getting into the problem. Campaign doesn't happen till the next page. Set the scene before you ask for money or you talk about money. And finally, I want to share a really, really bad example, in my view, of what a campaign case statement looks like. So don't do this. Here's a cover. It's almost black and white. It's called the Centennial Campaign, which is that's not even a name. That's boring as whatever. I blacked out the name of the organization, but it's a school. You would think that maybe for a school, you'd want to have a kid, maybe two kids, a few kids on the cover, maybe a teacher, maybe something that was other than boring building. Then you turn to a table of contents. Personally, I don't need a table of contents in my case statement. I need visceral, exciting language and pictures. Here we do have two kids though. Whoops. It's their backs, but at least there's two kids. And then the introduction. And it says, I love this in a bad way, so I'm just going to read it to you. There are moments in an institution's history that define its very existence. These are moments when challenges are turned into opportunities, when progress becomes greatness, and when dreams are transformed into reality. Okay, this is boilerplate. I happen to know it's boilerplate because I know the company that did it, and don't do this. So that's it on the case. I hope you got as inspired about cases as I am. Again, Jay, I'm just going to pause for a moment and entertain any questions.
Sure. That last one sounds like it could have been written by ChatGPT. We've been talking about that a lot in this series.
Oh my God, yeah.
But we have several questions that are great. And one actually refers back to the last section. I missed it because it was in the chat. So please, if you have questions, do put them in the Q&A so I won't make that mistake again. But I'll just refer to that one first, if you don't mind, Peter. And that's, should all the prospects in your gift chart be qualified? Do you mind touching on that? And then I'm going to ask you some case questions.
The prospects in your gift chart be qualified. So unless you know Bill Gates personally or have a connection to Bill Gates, he doesn't go in your gift chart. Neither does Oprah Winfrey or the other big names that you might think of, whoever they are. So you need people who you've got some ability to connect with. That's what I'd say. You don't want fantasy names. Another question, Jay, and I think then we'll move on.
Sure. Well, actually, that's all we had on that front. And I think that sometimes people ask a question about qualification, which has to do with financial qualification or other research. So I don't know if that's where they were going or not. But I know sometimes people wonder about that.
Yeah, there's a few aspects of qualified, can you relate to them? Is there a way to connect with them? Do they have theoretically the financial wherewithal to support your campaign at the level you think? Then the rest of it, that's where the art of fundraising comes in, is building the relationship. Sure. So if it's okay with them, I'm going to move on.
Absolutely. So we had a question here about, to building the case for support, do you recommend a competitive analysis of what other similar nonprofits might do or not do to inform the case?
Yes, that's a really interesting question. If you can do that, why not? And you want to be careful, just as I was saying about the economy. If the whole world is like, oh my God, I can't do things, you shouldn't follow their example. So if you're in a certain sector, I don't know, if you're a museum and you're like, every other museum doesn't do this thing, you have to think about whether you want to, you believe that the way they're doing things is right or not. There's a lot of overcoming limiting beliefs that needs to happen in a successful campaign.
Yeah. We had a question here that's pretty interesting. My board, they say, asked me for a case for support, and I wrote it similar to what you've described. Then they said it was too long. It was only 8 pages, and they asked for a 1-pager. And I've heard this before too. They asked for a 1-pager because, quote, no one reads. How do I handle this? Do I make a summary sheet? What are your thoughts on this whole desire for, bullets?
That's great. So if, 8 pages of text without any pictures and everything, that's kind of long. But if the board actually really likes it, that's a huge win. So you have to think about how you're going to utilize the case, is because ultimately how many people are going to read that 8 pages is probably a small number, but the feat of getting through that 8 pages and having everybody agree, yes, this is our story, that's a huge thing. And then you figure out, do board members want bullet points so they can then go talk to people about gifts? That's a fine request. You have to figure out how to use it. And Jay, I'm going to go on because we have a bit more to cover, and I want to make sure everybody gets their free money's worth. So we're going to talk about prospects now. People generally ask, do I have enough? How do I evaluate them? And where can I get more? Those are the main things that people wonder about prospects. We're going to look at the gift table again now, from do I have enough prospects to reach my goal? And we're going to focus on that middle column there, the prospects needed. In this particular case, we like to do, for the 2 upper levels, leadership and major gifts, like a 3-to-1 ratio. So if you need 1 gift of $1 million, you need 3 prospects. And on down, when it gets to community gifts, we like to do a 2-to-1 ratio. This is a very simple way to figure out approximately how many prospects you need for your campaign. And then you need to look at your database and see how many, do I even have 184 records of donor, do I have that many donors in my database? And if so, do they match to these levels of gifts? If I have 500 donors or 1,000 donors, and I have more to choose from to figure out if they can do this level. If I have 50 donors, that means I've got a different issue in front of me before I can start my campaign. So every organization comes to campaigns with different, different ones of these 6 elements really strong, and some others that need work. And in this particular case, this is a great way to figure out whether you're in the prospect place you need to be. When you need more prospects, we like to help nonprofits dig into their natural networks. And the natural networks is basically top donors and people they may know, your board members, people they know, advisory board members, other people connected to the mission, business associates, friends and neighbors, and rich uncles definitely count. We've had more than a few relatives and, kind of one-off connections to either board members, donors, even at a school, a teacher's relative who really cares about the school. When it's time to get organized, and this is, by the way, if you do download our free tools on our website, this is one of those tools. We call it a top prospect report. You want to put every potential donor in this report, where their names will be in the first and last name columns. And then when you're ready to start the actual campaign fundraising, which is not going to be right away because you have to get organized. Usually a feasibility study is a great way to do that. You're going to move through your prospect list by selecting a next step date for everybody, and then a next step. That's why those 2 arrows are there. You don't want to put every single donor, even if you have, let's say, 50 potential donors, don't put them all in the same month. You're never going to get to everybody. Figure out how many touches you can make in a month and put that many people there. Jay, I'm going to talk about the campaign committee, then I'll stop for just a moment for a few questions so we can do them both at the same time.
Sure.
So we've worked with a few nonprofits that have not really created a strong campaign committee. And as a result of that, their executive director and development director, and in this case, they were lucky to have a development director, slogged through the whole thing without a whole lot of support. And the challenge with that is it's more work, and it doesn't do that thing I talked about at the beginning of making your community stronger in a bigger way. And having campaign committee members is a great way to build a bigger pool for people to get involved in the future of your organization. So typically, and it's changed, it varies organization to organization and campaign to campaign, but typically we like to see 2 to 3 co-chairs, about 10 to 15 members, and sometimes some honorary co-chairs, people who are clearly not going to be doing work, but whose names being associated with the campaign are going to make a difference to the community and to potential donors. The purpose of the committee is to both oversee the campaign and engage in fundraising. Not every single person on the committee needs to be a wonderful fundraiser and want to be talking to donors, but a handful of them do need to be. We encourage face-to-face meetings when possible and needed, or Zoom to Zoom, monthly conference calls, correspondence to keep everybody up to date, engage them, don't just make them figureheads, and extemporaneous conference calls when needed. We also encourage a core group of committee members. It's usually 3 to 5 people, few staff members, and one of the co-chairs, and then others that are going to be more granularly involved, like on a week-to-week basis. And this will really drive the campaign forward. So Jay, I'm going to stop there for, let's say, 2 questions, and then we'll go on.
Oh, sure. Let me see if I can pick 1 or 2 that are particularly kind of fun to play with. We had a question about, let me see, if a campaign is a good opportunity for reaching out to new prospective donors, or do you need a year plus of cultivation of prospective new donors before it's realistic to consider them as viable campaign prospects?
It's one of those, it depends. And I think, Jay, you've probably seen the same thing. Like, you don't want to base your whole campaign and your hopes for leadership gifts on people you haven't talked to before. Mm-hmm. If you're hoping that your top gifts are going to come from new donors, I would say you need to cultivate those relationships for a while and then start your campaign.
And we did have a question that goes to timing as well. It's, what is the timing of naming a campaign? If you utilize a quiet phase, do you determine name and roll out when public or right out of the gate?
This is an interesting thing in terms of, well, first of all, interesting question, but in terms of the use of a feasibility study, because in the study, which I'll talk to you about in just about 2 minutes, in the study, we test that a draft of the case. We never take those shiny finalized case documents I showed you and use them in a feasibility study. Those are later. So in the study, we're asking people what they think of the case and what they think of the name. So we're kind of testing it out. And then after the study's done, we work with the nonprofit's leadership to set a name. Usually when we're starting to raise money before we're in a really public phase. And Jay, I'm going to move on to systems and staffing because there are a few interesting things to talk about there.
Of course.
So this is the 5th of the 6 elements. You need some systems to make things work for your campaign. Here's, there's probably a list that's twice as long as this. Here are the things that we've found are really key. Fundraising database, monthly reconciliation between gift income and the finance data. Don't not do that. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. Many people think they can track all campaign gifts on an Excel spreadsheet. Bad idea. Gift acceptance and donor recognition policies. How do you know whether you're going to accept a certain gift if you don't have a policy that tells you whether it's okay? You need a gift agreement letter. Usually we advise that it's legally binding. We've worked with tons of attorneys on those, but we always give a draft letter to our clients, after which we suggest they work with their own attorneys to make sure it works for them. Time and task management goes without saying, but I'm going to say it because you can't get into a campaign without knowing that you're going to have the time to do it and know who's going to be doing what. Your development office, even if it's just one person, needs systems and organizational, capacity to be organized. And the campaign is going to ramp up your culture of philanthropy, and you want to actively, consciously do that. This is a system that we use to determine how much fundraising you can do per month in terms of your staffing. I'm just going to take a quick look at this with you. Look at year 2, where it says energetic. So there's 8 meetings a month. This is the monthly activity. This could be the energetic 8 meetings a month. It could be one person. It could be 3 people, 2 committee members and 1 executive director or 1 development director. This is an aggregate of how much activity you can have each month. Then you can estimate how much you can have a year. And then in this example, it's 96 meetings a year. We're assuming 48 of those will be solicitations, and you'll get 24 gifts. That's a very conservative number for a variety of reasons. And then we've assigned a dollar amount. So you can play with these numbers up and down. Again, if you download our free tools, you'll get a copy of this and instructions on how to use it. For your staffing, come on, is there ever enough? I worked at Columbia University for 10 years, a very wealthy organization. There was never enough staffing. The rest of us, in the human scale world, we never have enough staff. So you have to figure out how to do it anyway, but you want to account for the need for more staff and hopefully have in your campaign budget the ability to hire additional people, even if it's part-time. You want to look at whether you have enough staff now. If you don't, how will I manage the campaign? Do I need more volunteer time? Can I hire staff? You need both people reaching out to prospects, and you need internal logistical campaign management. It's definitely possible to have board members and volunteers do some of it, but you have to be careful with that in terms of what their actual commitment and expertise is. Campaign consultants, I'm biased, but we're a great part of the mix. I now want to touch just really for a minute, because I want to finish up on time on the timing, which luckily it's not the least important, but it's the quickest one of the elements. The things you need to consider are, when is a renovation needed to happen? Is there a property purchase that's imminent? Are there urgent program needs that you need to get your campaign going as soon as possible? Other urgent needs. And I'm going to show you now, just briefly, we love it when people put the timing into a visual timeline, because it helps to explain the story. And these are just 3 examples. Here's one campaign. It went from 2014 to 2019. Actually went further because was just about to finish and the pandemic hit, and well, we all know that story. This one shows the campaign by the income and the expenses. What will, when do we need to start construction? How much are we going to spend when, versus when do we think the money will come in during planning? Will we raise any money actually while we're doing the feasibility study, and in our quiet and public phases? This one, again, it's a different example. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it's another way to look at it. And then finally, I just wanted to finish up, and then I'll answer 1 or 2 more questions on what is a feasibility study. Sometimes people like to call it a planning study. So here's what it does. It allows you to determine how much money can be raised, who the community of donors is going to be, what the level of interest is. It allows you to fine-tune your case for support by sharing it and in draft form with your donors. You begin the cultivation of your top donors, helps you determine everything about these 6 elements that we talked about. And it helps you get things up and running. Like I said, that word campaign is a word where it implies that you got to do some strategic organizing. So what happens when you do a feasibility study? Generally, you're interviewing somewhere between 15 and 60 potential donors. Usually it's done by the consulting firm. So we would be doing those interviews without you in the room. There are models where you can do them yourselves, or there's a combination. You get lots of notes on the case, which is the backbone of your campaign. You get a reality check on how much money you can raise, reality check on the excitement factor, and you get a report for your leadership on how to proceed. We absolutely 100%, we ask everybody we interview how much they might be willing to give if and when this campaign starts. And there's a lot of dynamics of, to know what their response actually means. Finally, if you are thinking about a capital campaign, what should you look for in a campaign consultant? We're biased. We think the answer is the Heller Fundraising Group. We can help you raise more money than you've ever raised before, and that's our picture again. And if you'd like to keep in touch, here's some of the ways to do that. We're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we have our website. That's our company phone number if you want to call us. And you have my personal email, that's our info@Heller Fundraising Group as well. Facebook, we're barely on it, but it's up there just for the heck of it. And then my final ask of you, while we have maybe 1 or 2 more questions, Jay, is while you're here, if you wouldn't mind using your phone to scan this QR code and give us a 5-star review on Google. We'd very much appreciate it.
So Peter, with that, feel free to pull out your phones and do that. You'll also see another QR code as we run some slides when Peter and I disappear in a minute, just so you can interact also with the sponsor of the series, which is DonorSearch. But do feel free to keep those out, and also to record contact information for Peter. And if it's helpful for myself, you can always reach me about this series at j@donorsearch.net, or you can find me on LinkedIn, where you can also find Peter and lots of our other colleagues in this field. We do have some other questions here, and we won't be able to get to all of them, so I'm just going to pick a couple, but then we're also going to take these questions and pass them on to Peter in case he can interact with you individually. And of course, you have his contact information, so you can do that independently as well. So we had a lot of great questions here, Peter, and I'll just try to grab a couple that have to do with amounts, because that always comes up. And so I'll try to see if I can jam them together somehow. One is about whether or not there's a, quote, formula for how much an annual giver will upgrade to be a part of a capital campaign, if that's like a double or triple or 10 times whatever. And then also another adjacent question, do you recommend a minimum gift from campaign committee members? And if so, how do you determine, knowing, what amounts to ask about?
Yeah, so the amount is always a little bit of a tricky thing. It's based on art and science. Mm-hmm. Donor research, for instance, geez, Jay, have you ever heard of DonorSearch? That's a good place to get some really initial information on people's charitable giving and wealth. We happen to use it all the time because it's a great tool. Every committee member should be there for a specific reason. Not every single committee member is there because they can make a leadership gift. Every committee member, I believe, should make a gift of some kind, even if it's really small, because they don't have that capacity. Yeah, I mean, you don't want a committee of made up entirely of people who can't give. That wouldn't work, because this is, let's face it, this is about money, and you have to be not shy about money, although you have to make sure that you don't value people with more money more than people without money, because that's just not fair to the way the world is. But it's, you do need money. to answer the second question, actually the first question, formulas are a little tricky. One formula you can use if you want to do this is to take somebody's annual gift, let's say it's $1,000, and multiply it by 2, which would be $2,000, and then multiply it by 5 for a 5-year pledge, and you've got a $10,000 ask for a campaign.
And I think that that's where we'll probably have to wrap it, Peter. But
Sure.
thank you.
Should I stop my share so you can
Yes,
go on with this?
if you would, and then we're going to bring these other slides up in a second, and we're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat. So thank you for that.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Before I guess I'm going to stop, and you do your thing, Jay.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Peter. Really appreciate you. And thank you for doing this today.